Kelly Page, and I'm a social design ethnographer. And my studio is based in Chicago, and I work across the States and with clients in the UK and Europe. And so my biggest challenge when it comes to the work that I do, so I do a lot with social media. So my work is really how we can use social media in impactful and engaging ways to tell an organization's story, or the story of their people, story of their products or their productions, or whatever it is they might be working on. So the biggest challenge I have is really staying up to date. So social media space is moving very quickly, a lot of new different platforms and technologies. And one thing that I find to overcome that challenge is I really collaborate with different people who come from different backgrounds or perspectives, and I work a lot with young people who are working with technologies every day and playing with them to try and basically learn different skills, new skills from other people. And I find it critically important. No one person can stay up to date with technology today. You really need a team of peers, of critical friends that you kind of share ideas with. You share certain platforms you're learning about, examples of how people or organizations might be using those platforms in different ways. So my advice to anyone who wants to work in a digital or social media space is really start to develop like a group of peers and critical friends where you share that knowledge and information, because it's impossible, really impossible to stay up to date.
You mentioned the younger generation that are more used to new devices, new technologies, social media.
Yeah.
How do you deal with customers that are, or the older generation or the senior generation that they are coming to get the device later in life? And tell us an example of how you solve the problem.
Well, I think one thing to be aware of, it's all about purpose and interest. So I find young people are really open to experimenting and trialing and working with the technologies in different ways. They want to experiment. Not all young people, but more often than not. So I find that when I'm in a situation where I might be working with individuals who aren't as keen to adopt or use technologies, usually what's blocking it is fear. So it's a fear that it's going to take up a lot of time, or it's fear that, it's going to replace them at some point, or it's fear that they're going to show what they don't know. I find that young people, for example, are very keen to experiment and trial and very exposed to new technologies. Whereas other people, I find that what I have to do is figure out what is the psychological process that's going on for them in terms of fear. What are they afraid of? What are they wary of? And once and it's usually through conversations, I usually interview them to really understand what's going on for them with the technology. And then what I do is it's really about helping to discover what's their purpose and what's a meaning that they might get from it. So a prime example, I worked with an organization and the finance department. I worked with the senior financial operator, and he couldn't see the point in tweeting or blogging. And he was based, a lot of arts organizations were their clients, and he and I had lots of discussions about it. And I explained to him, and we had this conversation about how he could become like a critical friend for other organizations when it comes to changes in financial regulations and the impact it has on the arts. And he could actually become this expert in this space of how arts organizations get funding, structured funding, and seek it. And once he discovered his own purpose for using it, he flew. So he then set up a blog, he had a Twitter account, and he could then see his role in using social media. So it's really about uncovering what the fear is and then helping discover the purpose.
Perfect. When that you established the purpose, have you seen any difference? And now we're moving to the international arena.
Yeah.
And this is part of the global learning. So you come from the UK, right? And then you came to the US, and the purpose maybe can be different in how they handle business. What are the major differences that you have observed and how you handle those differences?
Yeah. I think a major difference is relative to culture and what's acceptable in terms of communication. So how email is used, for example, or how social technologies are used to communicate as a team or with customers. And so there's certain cultural differences in every country and every cultural different sector. So and how to cope with that. As an ethnographer, so I'm an ethnographer by trade, it's a lot of observation and a lot of listening to figure out what are the social norms for that organization or that group of people, and learn that. Don't assume that everyone's going to use the technology the same way or have the same fears. Everyone's different. And it's not a gender thing, it's not an age thing, it's not even a country thing. People just bring different experiences to it. So it's very important to observe and to listen, to find out the group you're working with. What are their norms? What do they expect? And then how can you work with that as opposed to against it?
We have been here this weekend listening to people from many places, areas in this TEDx event. How do you incorporate TED or TEDx to your consulting or to your business?
Well, TED really provides a platform for bringing different ideas together along, technology, education, and design. And I find that TED Talks, sometimes different talks really can accentuate a key point. So, for example, creativity is a key part of a lot of the workshops that I do with individuals. And so I'll use a TED Talk potentially to prime, the people in my workshops about a way to look upon creativity. And then we use it as a platform for discussion. So TED's it's a great community. I learn a lot from people who I meet here, such as Jose, and Katie, and a lot of different people. And we meet, we share ideas, we share what we're working on. So not only is it just about the talks as a platform for conversation, it's also about the community that we're all part of.
That's the final question now. I keep this conversation short. What is your final advice to students that are watching this video and they want to be like you? They want to do the same thing that you are doing.
Yeah. So one thing that I will always be grateful of. I had experience early in my career in terms of research. So, and I did everything from focus groups to interviews to survey design. I sat in on meetings and documented them. Develop your skills of observing and listening to really understand what might be going on for an organization. Those skills, once you have them, that you can just build on them and develop, and technologies can help make or use those skills in better ways. So definitely invest in research skills and design thinking. Learn as much as you can about design thinking as a process to actually implement those skills in organizations.